And joining us now is Thomas Spoehr, who is the director for the Center for National Security at the Heritage Foundation. Mr. Spoehr served for more than 36 years in the Army, where he attained the rank of Lieutenant General before retiring. Thomas, thank you so much. You just heard us speak to Kristen Beck, a transgender former Navy SEAL. If she wanted to serve again, should she be allowed to?
That's a really good question. According to the president, the answer would be no. I think there are valid reasons for us to be prudent and cautious about changing our enlistment standards for the U.S. military. And so I think the path that has been advocated by Secretary Mattis and the Joint Chiefs of Staff to consider this is probably the best course of action right now.
Yeah, so that's right. Jim Mattis, the defense secretary, when he took his position, he said, let's put a pause on this Obama-era policy for 6 months. Let's examine the situation. But according to Senator John McCain, who is the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, that study has not been completed. And yet the president has announced this decision that would appear to ban transgender individuals from serving in the military. Did the president jump the gun on this?
I don't think the two decisions are incompatible. Secretary Mattis wanted more time. The president said, we're not going to do it. I don't think those two decisions are not, can be reconciled, I think, together, that more time is needed to make sure before we make any changes to the policy of joining the military.
It appears, based on the fact that the Pentagon referred questions about this back to the White House, that it was caught off guard. And it's not clear, based on Ms. Huckabee Sanders' press conference, what will now happen to transgender service members currently serving in places like Afghanistan or Iraq. How can the Pentagon deal with those who are currently serving without causing a major disruption?
Yeah, I think that's a valid concern. We need to make sure that we're fair and treat people with respect and dignity. I should point out that the policy that did not allow people to be transgender and in the military was the law and the rule of this country until last year. And so reverting back to that policy will not be all that hard, I would not think.
This was a reinstatement based on Ash Carter, the former Secretary of Defense. The president has also cited medical costs. How is that a factor here? And I just want to point out that a study last year by the RAND Institute estimated less than 0.1% of the military would ask for gender reassignment surgery for a total cost of just over $5 million. That's out of a huge budget, north of $500 billion, so relatively insignificant from that standpoint. But I know you're sort of an expert on cost efficiency in the military. What do you think of that argument?
You know, the total cost is not that big compared to the big military, but we have to look at this in the context of all the other things that we consider when someone joins the military. We don't allow someone to join the military, for example, if they have asthma, which requires constant medication. We don't allow someone to join the military if they have type 1 diabetes, which requires insulin. And we don't even allow them to join the military if they have sleep apnea, which requires them to have access to a device which allows power.
Right.
And so this idea of not letting people into the military that require constant medication and possibly surgeries is relatively consistent with the military's entrance criteria.
And yet, I was reading an essay that you wrote, which said that fewer than 29% of Americans aged 17 to 24 are qualified to serve. So there is, and it's obviously a volunteer military that we have in this country. Why close the door to more people that are willing to serve?
Yeah, Stephanie, I think we do need to be very careful before we close the door on anybody's service. And the Army went through a period where we stopped letting people with big tattoos come in the military, and that hurt our recruiting efforts. And so I think we need to be very cautious about, closing any opportunity for people to serve. Having said that, I think there are some concerns out there about the mental resilience, the psychological stress that additional military service may place on transgender individuals.
You know, as somebody that served for so long in the Army, I just wonder if you can give us a little insight into this unit cohesion argument that's being made and how that would translate for you in the field of battle with somebody that was transgender.
Yeah, for me, Stephanie, what it comes down to cohesion is being able to count on the person to your left and your right. So can they carry their own weight? Can they carry the burden will they do what's expected of them when the time comes? And so I think people typically adapt to most things, but if they can't count on those people around them, then that inspires some trouble. So I think that's the part we need to worry about is it fair to people that may be experiencing a greater level of psychological anxiety or stress to place them in the most stressful environment that we have on this planet, which is combat.
And you feel that transgender individuals may have more of this anxiety or more of these mental issues?
Stephanie, I'm not a scientist, but I've read a few studies that say that people that are transgender experience psychological anxiety at a rate 9 or 10 times the average U.S. population, that they attempt suicide at a rate much greater than the average population. Those concern me because those are people that are not in combat. What happens to them when we put them in a very stressful situation?
Thomas Spoehr, thank you for sharing your perspective with us.
Happy to. Thank you.